Hola amigos. Well, it's been a while since I made a video and I'm hoping that you noticed that I haven't been around for a couple of months. I think I might be pushing it a little bit if I were to ask if you miss me, but I'm back now anyway. The reason why is I took 6 weeks off to do some traveling because I'm at the stage in my life now where I have this need to see as much of the world as possible, bucket list things. Anyway, what a great break my wife and I had. We traveled in Europe for 6 weeks. We went to Ireland, where I'm originally from, to visit my family. And from there, we went on to Italy, where we took in Rome, gosh, it's beautiful there, Florence, Tuscany, and the Amalfi Coast, which was crowded with a lot of tourists. We followed that by going to Croatia, where we stayed in Dubrovnik, in Split, and out on the islands of Korčula and Hvar. And after that, we traveled to Athens, Greece, and saw the Acropolis there. Amazing. Then the last part of our trip was out to the Greek island of Kefalonia. Now, the whole trip was absolutely amazing, but while we were there, I found myself comparing some of these beautiful places to Puerto Vallarta and to living in Mexico in general, particularly while we were in Greece and on the island of Kefalonia with its amazing beaches. The ocean is so crystal clear and the beautiful sunsets. But now that I'm back in Puerto Vallarta, I started thinking about the differences between Puerto Vallarta and these other beautiful places that we visited. And I came up with a few things that I'm grateful for just being able to live here in Puerto Vallarta, having experienced life in these other European countries. Before I get back into it, allow me to remind you to please like the video and subscribe to my channel below, Living in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And if you're thinking about moving to Puerto Vallarta in 9 days, 90 days, or even 9 months, feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you to make that smooth move to Puerto Vallarta. So come on, let's check this out. So the first thing I wanted to talk about are the everyday prices. In other words, the cost of living in Europe. The cost of living in Europe is excruciatingly high. All of the countries that we visited, Ireland, Italy, Croatia and Greece, are all members of the European Union. So we had no need to change currencies from country to country, which made things a bit easier. And the prices for food, groceries and gas were pretty much the same in all of these countries. To give you some comparisons with Puerto Vallarta pricing, the price of gasoline in Mexico is about 24 pesos per liter, which works out at about $4.50, $4.45, $4.50 a gallon. Now that's not cheap compared to US prices, unless you live in California, where it's about the same. But compare that to gas prices, or petrol as they call it in Europe, where I experienced prices ranging from €1.80 and up to €1.95 per litre. That's approximately $7.50 to $8 per gallon. Ouch! No wonder these Europeans drive small cars or Vespas and motorcycles. So even though gas seems higher here, than in the US. We're still doing a lot better than the folks across the pond. Obviously, while traveling, we ate in restaurants most of the time, and I don't think I ever paid less than 50 euros. That's about 55 US dollars for lunch, and about 70 to 100 US dollars for dinner for the two of us. That would have included maybe one glass of wine and a beer. Now, not too bad, I suppose, compared to the US, but still a lot more than you would pay for lunch or dinner in Puerto Vallarta, unless you go to some of the upscale restaurants here. Now, most lunches here in Puerto Vallarta for two would maybe cost you $20, 20 US dollars, and dinner $30 to $40, and more in an upscale restaurant. We spent a lot of money on food over there, but you got to eat, right? So we didn't buy a lot of groceries, but we found that the groceries we did buy were much more expensive than here in Puerto Vallarta. So the second thing that I noticed was friendliness. One of the things I love about Puerto Vallarta is the friendliness of the Mexican people. And whereas we did encounter many friendly people in Europe, especially in Ireland, of course, I'm biased on that one, and in Croatia and in Greece, not so much in Italy. The friendliness didn't compare to that of the Mexican people, that's for sure. There's a genuineness to the Mexican brand of friendliness that I didn't feel in Europe. An Italian man I had a conversation with told me that there's a frustration and in some cases some resentment in some parts of Europe towards tourists and visitors. They kind of feel that they're being overrun, and that was evident when we went to the Amalfi Coast, which was teeming with tourists. So Puerto Vallarta is a busy tourist town too, but Mexicans know that tourism is the lifeblood of the economy here, and so that resentment doesn't exist here really. The number three thing that stood out to me were the beaches and the beach clubs. One of the highlights of coming to or living in Puerto Vallarta and the surrounding Bay of Banderas area is being able to lounge on the magnificent beaches here. So whether you're just taking a towel and a beach umbrella yourself or paying for a comfy bed and enjoying the food service at a beach club, there are a whopping 22 beaches around the Banderas Bay, with at least 7 beaches in Puerto Vallarta town itself. Now, all of them are fabulous white sand beaches with warm turquoise waters to swim in. In contrast, the beaches in Greece and on the Greek island of Kefalonia that we were on were mostly stony beaches. We actually had to buy ourselves water shoes while we were there because it was almost impossible to walk on the stony beaches, never mind trying to get in and out of the water after a swim. Lying on the beach was uncomfortable, but fortunately there were many beach clubs with beds and umbrellas, much like the ones we have here in Puerto Vallarta. I decided that the beach clubs here in Puerto Vallarta are much better for a couple of reasons, but mostly the food. At the beach clubs here, it's so much better than what we experienced at European beach clubs. I do have to say though that I preferred swimming in Greece and Croatia than in Puerto Vallarta. Here the Pacific waves can be quite big, but in Greece and Croatia the Ionian Sea was calmer, and oh my God, the water was so clear and turquoise blue, like I'd never seen it before. The beach clubs there were also much more expensive than in Puerto Vallarta, and as I mentioned, the food was nothing to write home about, and service was, well, just okay. Unlike the food and service you get here in Puerto Vallarta beach clubs. One of the nice features of many Puerto Vallarta beach clubs is that they will credit your bill with the cost of the entry to the beach club if you consume a certain peso amount of food and drinks. We didn't experience that in the Greek, Italian and Croatian beach clubs, but that's not to say that they didn't exist, just that we didn't find that to be the case. Okay, the next thing that blew me away were the sunsets. Now, you know, one of the things that Greece touts and prides itself on is the spectacular sunsets. People flock to the Greek islands and even the islands off of Croatia. You've seen Instagram reels showing hundreds of people in Santorini gathered together to watch the spectacular sunsets. In Kefalonia, I witnessed that myself with smaller crowds. But as I watched the sunset myself, I couldn't help thinking that I have witnessed much more spectacular sunsets in Puerto Vallarta, and without hundreds of people jammed together on a beach or hillside. Sorry, but Puerto Vallarta sunsets beat the Greek and Croatian sunset, hands down. Okay, so let's take food and restaurants. Now, I was saying earlier about how we mostly ate out on our travels. So we experienced lots of restaurants and food throughout Ireland, Greece, Italy, and Croatia. Our budget didn't allow us to hit up a lot of the high-end restaurants, but there were one or two we tried. Now, growing up in Ireland, the food was always pretty bland, and Ireland had a name for bland food. Not so since its entry into the EU. The country is full of great chefs, and the quality of food has gone far beyond cabbage and potatoes from my time. Of course, Italy is famous for its pasta and pizza, and we enjoyed many great pasta dishes and pizza in Rome and Florence. Croatia has similar cuisine to Italy since it's straight across the Adriatic Sea from eastern Italy. Now, Greece, of course, has its own cuisine, and I love the Greek salads. However, we didn't encounter a lot of diversity with the types of food. I would have been hard-pressed to find a Vietnamese or Argentinian restaurant, for example. And it seemed to me that a lot of menu items were the same, particularly in Greece. This is definitely not the case in Puerto Vallarta, where you can pretty much find all kinds of food from different countries, as well, of course, great Mexican food. Now, Puerto Vallarta's restaurants are, in my opinion, better in variety and quality than most we ate at in Europe, and again, for a lot less money. I guess the reason I decided to make this video is because I came to the realization that after traveling and experiencing some of these amazing European countries, and they were unique and exciting, that I am truly blessed to live in a place like Puerto Vallarta that is everything and more than the countries we visited. I would definitely return to some of these countries, but living here in Puerto Vallarta made me less awestruck by the European experience. I never have to travel too far because paradise is right on my doorstep here. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and remember, if you're thinking about making that move to Puerto Vallarta or anywhere in the Banderas Bay area, feel free to reach out to me by phone, text or email, and I'd be happy to help you make that smooth move to Puerto Vallarta. So until next time, hasta luego.